doing some cleaning of my house, and I found the tube with that in my basement that she sent me 15 years ago. And it was really timely that we actually came here. And so one of the things I think we have an opportunity to do is to take a look at that. I've taken a picture of everything, in all the different sections. You can start to mark the fact that, number one, you're here, and number two, literally mark on that any corrections that you think need to be made, and then I will endeavor to come up with a, I'll leave this, advanced technology, if you want.
From all over the world, put me on the job.
I want to do this now. Wait, she's calling on video. She's Skyping. So if we have an opportunity to do that, that would be really, really great. All right. So please, that's your assignment for today. Second, there are some artifacts. My mother had passed away earlier this year, and we had gone through some of her stuff. So we had found some of the pictures, and what I find really interesting, in my mom's sort of last 6 or 9 months, she recited stories again and again about certain things that were, I guess, important in her life. And there was one story that I wanted to convey because it was really so impactful to me and our heritage. It was about, she was documenting a story about when she was about 6 or 7 years old. And her father, William, took a boat to Europe, ostensibly to look for fur or something like that. Apparently, though, he took a German liner, not an American or a British liner. And the way it was described to me was that he was chastised for taking a German boat. But little did we know that he probably had an ulterior motive, and that was to start finding out that some of the things that were the drum beats that were coming out of Europe. This was apparently 1934, or that thereabouts. And the way my mother describes his arrival back in New York when they picked him up in a taxi cab, and she understood, I guess, the Yiddish that he was saying, and he said, "They're killing the Jews." This is in 1934, so 5 or 6 years afterwards. So things were going on that the family was working on. And apparently, and I don't know this for a fact, but she had said that William and other people in the New York metropolitan area, or perhaps even in the U.S., had worked to bring people over. And I don't know if you can verify that or not.
I can tell you another story. I'm holding just one aside. Before you leave, please sign in on this family tree.
I'm doing it.
Everybody sign in there. Okay, what I wanted to say, there was a story my mother told me.
Got it.
Whose name at the moment eludes me. I know it all the time. And it's always mentioned at the time of the Holocaust Memorial in the Yeshiva of Lachish, as a matter of fact, at their commemoration, or, sad commemoration. There was a Chalmer person who was able to get out of Europe during the Holocaust and was able to come to America and came to our house, as well as other Chalmer, and he came to, ultimately, to FDR, and finally, he got no action, so they knew what was happening. And then he ended up and immolated himself, put himself on fire in front of 10 Downing Street. He was a Chalmer, and he's known, but right now I can't think of his name. But the story is out there, and speaking of Chalmer, so.
Wait, there's another interesting story that you told about your cousin who decided, he created the FDIC, like, he came up with...
Oh, that's not my cousin, that's Manya's father-in-law.
A relative, then.
What I want to know is who owned the Gramercy Park hotels? How did they sell it? And why?
I don't know. My father was a Pachelone, and why he sold it.
Of the Gramercy Park?
Really?
Yes.
Can we get it back?
That's right. That would be nice.
Statute of limitations.
Married, I forget the name, Weissman, or Weissman,
For a while.
Should I keep recording this?
That owned different places,
Keep going.
including that, and then unfortunately they sold them all, and
Wait, but what about the fur process? No, not everybody knows
yeah.
about
All
that.
right.
That's interesting.
Well, there is.
No, you know about it.
We have
You know a little
H.B.
bit.
Bishop,
Other people probably don't know that.
great-grandfather, great-grandfather,
Terrific.
who invented, he was working.
He was a chemist,
Well, what
right?
happened is how they got married. My mother's sister Rico, and her first cousin, the two sisters, and they're all buried in the same cemetery in Kew Gardens Hills. Anyway, what happened is that this one had a beautiful daughter, and this one had a very handsome and brilliant son, the two sisters. So they said, why should it go to waste with strange ones, Fremde? Let's marry them to each other. So they got married. Now they managed to have a child, and then he went to learn in Odessa. But in Odessa, he kind of decided to interest himself in other things as well, and he studied chemistry, and he invented the fur dyeing process, where you could take a coney, a little rabbit, and make it look like a leopard or a sable or whatever. You know, you could translate a very lowly fur into a very fancy looking fur, and he established that business, and then ultimately they went to England. And he kept coming back and forth, and babies were made, and he went back and learned some more. And then they were employed by a company in England, and quickly made their way to America, where they had a mansion in Fort Greene area. They had chauffeurs and limousines. And my mother said this was like Bet HaMikdash HaShlishi, the third temple, because all the Chelma, they brought a lot of people over, and everybody was a point where everybody would visit, and it was the location of the gatherings of all the Chelma that came to America.
I have something to say.
Yeah.
The most important thing to come out of this event is all these nice people who we should know better than we do should write their names and their addresses and their emails, so you could be invited to simchas and family get-togethers. So it's not once a year.
That's right.
Because my mother will not remember
Well, we
the
have
end.
the email.
Yeah, but this is the.
But it should be on a sheet, so we can.
This is the pen that you can sign in on. And you can leave your numbers and addresses, and this is the beginning of many happy gatherings, hopefully.
Should have happened earlier.
This is my great-grandson, Nachi, and this is my great-grandson, Dovi, and he carries the name of my dearly departed husband. His name is Dov Veit, and he was at the monument to my husband, which is on the Kastel Mountain in Jerusalem, right outside.
He's a good baseball player.
And I have a picture on my phone of him right there. He carries the exact name, and this is his younger brother, who's a very good mathematician in the family tradition too. And this is little Kaya Shira, also my little great-granddaughter. Yes, Kaya Shira. And she's very, very pretty and very cute.
This is those are my children. I'm Suzanne.
Yes, and this is
And
Suzanne.
that's my husband, Adam.
Adam, where are you? There he is. Okay.
And where's my mother-in-law, Doreen? Doreen,
Doreen,
show your face, Doreen.
Show your face.
That's
And your
my
mother and
husband's
your
mother.
father.
And my mother and my father over there.
Okay, we were getting to them.
Yep.
Okay, we
Okay,
shall.
come on.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm coming.
And there's another little
And it
great-grandchild.
continues. The next generation.
Yes. And they know, and they hear the stories, and they learn the stories, and it's wonderful that it all continues, and I have a lot of confidence, and I hope you will.
Amen.
Wonderful.
Still not done.
And this is Lee Payne's wife.
I'm sorry. She's gonna do a selfie now.
Am I in the picture?
Yeah.
I don't know, it's a recording, but it's not recording.
Oh, it just stopped.
Yeah, right now. Oh, hers is not recording.
Can I hold it for you?
Did you have some more to say about it?
No, I'll go on and then I won't shut up. So.
It's so nice.
Judy.
Yeah, well, would you like to mention Pearl and Judy?
Oh, good idea.
And Donnie.
Okay, everybody.
So my mom did not enter the world alone. She had a brother, Dick, or Richard, and I have his bar mitzvah picture over there, and a few other things, and Judy, who I found a few pictures that I found on the table over there as well. And what else?
Judy has two sons.
Oh, and Judy, right, I have to do the tree, right? So Judy has two kids, Gary and Don.
Where do they live?
They live in Florida. One is sort of not talked to, and I guess one is talked to. I think they live in the Clearwater area or the Tampa area. And
I thought I had his number, Donnie, and I called Donnie and thinking it was.
We all had dinner with him recently. He,
I'm in touch with Donnie. I thought I gave you the phone.
Yeah,
Steven
well, I just
mentioned
took
Debbie
it,
too. We have
and
a
I
sister.
thought I had it, and I called him, and I ended up with all this Donnie.
we all, and we also, Gail and I also have a younger sister, Debbie, who lives upstate New York and was
Who
not
lives
able
in
to
upstate
come.
New
My
York?
younger sister, Debbie.
Oh, right.
So,
Wait, do you
and I think,
Yeah, let me hear. Go ahead.
No, Mama.
No, that's the other family. That's not.
What, that William then had a second marriage?
Oh,
right.
Alan.
Forget that, right?
Two of the children, but we're not in
All right,
touch with
forget
them.
that.
They're both doctors.
One's good and one's evil.
One is right. Unmentionable.
Alice is a great one. No, Alice is a
We have a motivational speaker as a guest speaker.
all right, get up, come on. Go Kayla, go Kayla.
So as Anna said, my great-grandmother and her mother were sisters, and the marriage between my great-grandfather and my great-grandmother, there was actually a postcard from Odessa, a very strange postcard. I wonder if I have it in the scrapbook that I brought, of my great-grandfather reflected in a bunch of different mirrors in a straw hat, and it came very bizarre picture. and it's a letter to my great-grandmother before they're married, and finally Elliot's mother, may she rest in peace, was able to translate it for us. She said it was the most unromantic proposal letter that she ever saw in her life. So clearly the
parents
mothers...
had concocted the shit out.
Exactly. So it was like, well, okay, let's get married, something like that. Yeah.
Might as well.
Very unromantic, but I have to say for me, the most wonderful thing is that, so that's back like 4 generations, to see, I didn't know my cousins growing up and met them as an adult, this wonderful family, and to see 4 generations later, my daughters, Lisa and Shoshana,
Get your tissue.
one left and one in school nearby, that 4 generations later that the children are connected. Elisa and Aviva with Sharon's daughter, and Shoshana with David's daughter.
And it's
got a good view.
that many.
Oh, you want me to move on? I could go
I don't know,
stand.
they disappeared into the woodwork like some of our cousins. We don't know
Yes.
who they are or what or how, but we're
The
glad
Waldorf.
that she came back. All of them I spoke to, those are cousins, and they're in Florida, because they were sorry they couldn't.
So it's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
Okay, and this will be okay, Lisa has come from far.
Very far.
Lisa
We won't
from
talk about what
Berkeley.
city in Berkeley, I mean, what city in California. I am Anna's niece. My father was Sam Carr. Sam, brother to Irving and to Anna, and I'm married to Jonathan. We have 2 children, Abby and David. Couldn't be here today. Abby's going for a master's in NYU in art education, and David is still an undergraduate outside of Philly, and I feel like I'm a New Yorker, but I live over there. And I miss my family here.
We're glad you're here. And this whole party was made a week before Hanukkah, so Lisa could take it.
That's in the film tradition.
The Hanukkah party. And this is Bruce.
I'm Bruce. I'm Tammy's brother. Anna's my aunt. Irving Karp is my father. And I have a daughter, Ilana, who's not here. She's at a party of some sort. And that's it.
Oh, I meant to say I have a brother.
Yes.
It's over there.
We were getting to that.
Yes, okay. So I'm Lady Clark. I'm Lisa's brother, also a nephew of Tanda Anna. My father was Tanda Anna. My father Sandy Clark was her brother.
And here
My name is Tony.
Hanina.
My
Nina, my daughter Esther, my daughter Nechama, two other children not here, David and Ellie. And here we are. Happy to be here. Happy to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful, Patty. We had a tradition.
That's
When
what
they
they
were
did.
little kids, and we used to have the kind of. Do you remember that party?